Hello, and welcome everyone to the Deep Dive.
Hello. Great to be here.
Before we jump into today's topic, just a super quick, friendly request from us. If you enjoy what we do here, exploring language learning and all sorts of interesting sources, please do hit that subscribe button.
Yeah, it really helps us out. Lets us know you're finding this useful.
It absolutely does. We love doing these deep dives, and your support makes it possible.
And a very warm welcome from me, too. I'm always excited to see what sources we get to unpack each time.
Me too. And that's the whole idea behind the deep dive, isn't it?
Pretty much. Listeners send in materials.
Exactly. Articles, videos, forum discussions, research papers sometimes, all sorts of things.
And our job is to sift through it all, pull out the key ideas, the connections, the actionable stuff.
Think of us as your research assistants, maybe. We do the digging, so you get the insights without feeling completely overwhelmed. A shortcut to being well-informed on a topic.
That's a good way to put it. And for this particular deep dive, we've got a really fascinating collection of resources.
We do indeed. They're all centered around a goal many English learners share. Figuring out how to reach that advanced C1 level.
C1 proficiency, yeah. It's a big milestone for a lot of people.
So, what have we got in the mix? Well, there's some blog posts, the kind that list useful resources and give practical advice.
Resource lists are always popular.
Definitely. Then we have transcripts from some YouTube videos, specifically looking at C1 level grammar and vocabulary. Always good to see concrete examples.
Absolutely. Seeing the language broken down like that is helpful.
And this is quite interesting. We've also got some Reddit threads.
The voice of the learners themselves.
Exactly. People sharing their own experiences, the struggles, the successes.
Yeah.
Asking for advice on getting to C1.
Real world stuff.
That adds a great dimension. So it's not just theoretical advice, but also grounded in actual learner journeys.
Precisely. It feels like a really well-rounded set of materials to explore this C1 question from different angles. I agree. I'm genuinely looking forward to unpacking all of this and highlighting the most useful takeaways for everyone listening.
Okay, let's dive right in then. First things first, we need to get a handle on this C1 level itself. What does it actually mean to be C1?
Right. It's easy to throw around labels like B2, C1, C2, but what's the substance behind C1?
Well, one of our sources, the transcript from that English with Lucy video, gives a pretty compelling description.
Oh, yeah. What does she focus on?
She talks about it in terms of achieving genuine freedom of expression.
Freedom of expression. Okay, that sounds good, but what does it look like in practice?
Well, she connects it to very real-life situations. Things like giving a presentation at work, maybe a high-stakes one.
Okay, yeah, that requires confidence.
Or telling jokes with friends, understanding the humor, responding naturally.
Which involves cultural nuance, too.
Definitely. Also, effectively running a meeting, making your points clearly, understanding others.
Professional communication skills.
And even writing things like detailed reports or complex emails. Basically handling a wide range of communication tasks smoothly.
So the core idea there is less about just knowing grammar rules and more about functional fluency.
Yeah.
Being able to operate effectively in different contexts.
I think that's exactly it. It's the flexibility and ease across different domains, social, professional, maybe academic. It's about using the language, not just knowing about it.
That makes sense. It's a significant step up from, say, B2, where you might still feel a bit limited in certain situations.
Exactly. And if we broaden the view slightly, look at the official CEFR definition, the Common European Framework of Reference, which we found outlined on Wikipedia.
Yes, the CEFR, the sort of standard benchmark. What does it add?
It reinforces that idea of fluency and flexibility, but it adds more detail. It mentions understanding demanding longer texts.
Okay, so comprehension of complex material, not just simple articles.
Right, and recognizing implicit meaning, reading between the lines, perhaps.
That's definitely an advanced skill. What else?
Expressing ideas fluently and spontaneously. That spontaneity is key, I think.
Meaning you're not constantly pausing, searching for words, getting stuck.
Yeah, or at least not noticeably. The conversation flows more naturally. You can formulate your thoughts pretty quickly.
Okay. And does it mention different types of language use?
It does. It specifically talks about using language flexibly and effectively for social, academic, and professional purposes. So adapting your style.
Right. You wouldn't talk to your boss the same way you talk to your mates, even in your native language. C1 means you can manage that in English, too.
Exactly. And then there's the production side, particularly writing.
Yes. What about writing?
The CEFR definition highlights the ability to produce clear, well-structured, detailed text on complex subjects.
So not just simple sentences, but organized paragraphs, logical arguments.
Right. And showing control over organizational patterns, using connectors, words like however, furthermore, consequently, effectively.
Cohesive devices, yeah. Making the text flow logically and smoothly.
So putting the video insights and the CEFR definition together, C1 really signifies a major leap. It's about depth of understanding and sophistication in expression.
It sounds like the level where you start to feel genuinely comfortable and competent in almost any situation you might encounter in English.
I think so. And connecting this back to maybe the listener's goals.
Right.
If you're aiming to feel truly well-informed, to be able to engage with complex ideas and not feel overwhelmed or like you're missing something,
then reaching C1 seems like a really crucial step towards that.
it unlocks so much more, doesn't it? Deeper conversations, more challenging reading material, greater professional opportunities, perhaps.
Absolutely. It allows you to express your own thoughts with much more precision and nuance as well.
So maybe a quick pause for thought for our listeners. Thinking about this description, the freedom, the flexibility, the spontaneity, the depth, how does that align with your reasons for learning English?
Yeah, what specific situations come to mind where you'd want that C1 level of competence? Is it for work, for study, for social life, for personal enjoyment, like reading complex novels?
Pinpointing that why can be really motivating, Ken.
Definitely. It gives you a target to aim for.
Okay, so we have a clearer picture of what C1 is. Now, how do we get there? Let's talk specifics, starting with grammar.
Grammar, the favorite topic of many learners. Or perhaps not.
True. But the English with Lucy video we looked at does a great job of highlighting some key grammatical structures.
Yeah.
They're often focus on at the C1 level.
Right. And it's important to stress, I think, that at C1, it's often less about learning brand new fundamental rules.
Like learning the past tense for the first time.
Exactly. It's usually more about mastering more sophisticated ways to use the grammar you probably already have some familiarity with, adding layers.
Refining and expanding your toolkit, basically.
Precisely. Adding nuance, complexity, and often formality or specific stylistic effects.
Okay, so what are some of these C1 grammar points? The video mentions participle clauses first.
Yes. Participle clauses. Things like ungen clauses or een clauses used to connect ideas.
Can you give an example? How do they work?
Sure. Instead of saying the CEO was frustrated by the lack of progress, so she called an emergency meeting, you could use a participle clause. Frustrated by the lack of progress, the CEO called an emergency meeting.
Okay, I see. It makes it shorter, more concise.
Exactly. Conciseness is one benefit. It also adds a degree of grammatical sophistication. It sounds more written sometimes, more formal perhaps.
So it's about sentence structure variety as well, avoiding just simple sentences all the time.
Yes, definitely. Using participle clauses allows you to embed more information into a sentence elegantly, which is a hallmark of advanced writing and sometimes speaking too.
So understanding how to form them correctly, present participles, past participles, and where to place them is key at C1.
Correct. And understanding the implied subject. In the example, frustrated clearly refers to the CEO. Getting that wrong can lead to confusion, the infamous dangling modifier.
Yes. Good point. Okay, so participle clauses, useful for conciseness and sophistication. What's next?
Advanced conditionals.
Right. We all learned the basic if clauses 0, first, second, third conditionals.
But C1 involves getting comfortable with more nuanced or less common conditional structures, like mixed conditionals or using inversion.
The video gave that example. Were we to invest in the company, we would be taking a huge risk. That's different from if we invested, isn't it?
It is subtly different, yes. Were we to invest often sounds more formal and perhaps slightly more hypothetical or tentative than the standard second conditional if we invested.
So it's about choosing the right structure for the right level of formality and likelihood.
Exactly. It's about having more tools to express these subtle shades of meaning. The video also mentioned using words like suppose or supposing.
Like suppose we missed the deadline.
Right. And it even pointed out the importance of punctuation with these, like potentially using a semicolon. Suppose we were to expand into the Korean market, how would that impact our operations?
Okay, so it's getting into finer details of grammar and punctuation at this level. Precision becomes more important.
Very much so. C1 requires greater accuracy overall.
Okay, advanced conditionals. Got it. What else from the grammar list?
The passive voice gets an upgrade too?
Really? How can the passive voice get more advanced? Isn't it just subject, verb, object becoming object, verb, subject?
Well, the basic structure is yes. But C1 often involves using more complex verb forms within the passive. The video highlighted using line forms.
And one form's in the passive. How does that work?
The example given was something like, the issue lies in the funds not having been allocated correctly.
Not having been allocated. Okay, I see. That sounds quite formal, quite complex.
It is. This kind of structure allows you to focus on the action, or lack of action in this case, without necessarily specifying who did or didn't do it. It's common in formal reports, academic writing, that sort of thing.
So it's about understanding and maybe being able to use these more complex passive constructions, especially in writing.
Precisely. It adds another layer to your ability to structure information impersonally or objectively when needed.
Makes sense. Okay, moving on. Modals, like can, could, might, should.
Yes, modals also become more nuanced at C1. It's not just about their basic meanings anymore.
How so?
One key area is using them with hedging language. Adverbs like potentially, conceivably, possibly.
So softening the statement.
Exactly. The video suggested this adds politeness and professionalism. For example, instead of saying, opening an office there will lead to partnerships, you might say.
Opening an office in that region could potentially lead to lucrative partnerships.
Precisely. It sounds less assertive, perhaps more realistic or diplomatic, which is often necessary in business or academic contexts.
That's a subtle but important difference in tone.
Very much so. And the video also touched on nuance in past modals.
Past modals, like could have, might have, should have.
Yes. The example was something like, you might have told me that the meeting had been canceled.
Okay. What's the nuance there?
Well, depending on the intonation and context, that sentence could be a gentle criticism. You should have told me, but you didn't. Or simply a statement of possibility. Perhaps you did tell me, I don't remember.
I see. So C1 involves understanding these subtleties, which might depend heavily on context and how something is said.
Exactly. It's moving beyond the literal grammatical meaning to understand the pragmatic function, what the speaker is doing with the language.
Okay, interesting. What else is in the C1 grammar toolkit?
Cleft sentences?
Cleft sentences. What are those? Sounds painful.
No, nothing like that. There's structures used for emphasis. You cleave or split a normal sentence to highlight a particular part, often starting with it is or what.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Instead of effective time management sets top performing employees apart, you could say, it's effective time management that sets top performing employees apart.
Okay. So you use it's and that to put the spotlight on effective time management.
Exactly. Or you could use a what clause. What sets top-performing employees apart is effective time management. It's a way to control the focus of your sentence.
So another tool for structuring information and adding emphasis where you want it.
Precisely. Very useful in both writing and speaking to make your point clear and impactful.
Right. What about inversion? That sounds complex.
It can be, but C1 learners usually start encountering it more often, especially in certain structures. We already saw it in the conditional example. Were we to invest instead of if we were to invest.
So the verb comes before the subject.
Yes. It also happens after negative or limiting adverbials. Things like not only, rarely, under no circumstances.
So instead of I have rarely seen such a display, you might say.
Rarely have I seen such a display. It adds emphasis and a more formal, sometimes literary tone.
Okay, so it's a stylistic choice mainly, used for effect.
Largely, yes. It's not essential for basic communication, but using it correctly demonstrates a high level of grammatical control.
Good to know. Are there any others?
The video briefly mentioned narrative tenses.
Narrative tenses?
Yeah.
Like past simple, past continuous.
Yes, but specifically the technique of using the present tense to make a past story more vivid and immediate.
Oh, right. Like when someone's telling a story and they say, so I'm walking down the street and suddenly this dog runs out, even though it happened yesterday.
Exactly that. It's called the historical present. Using it effectively can make storytelling much more engaging. That's more of a stylistic feature of spoken English often.
Okay. And finally,
expressions for the near future. Going beyond just going to or will, using phrases like be on the verge of, be about to, be on the point of.
Example.
The company is on the verge of launching a new product line. It suggests immediacy.
So, more specific ways to talk about time.
Yes. Overall, you see the pattern. C1 grammar is about adding precision, nuance, formality, emphasis, stylistic variety. It's about fine-tuning your communication.
It's not like learning a whole new language, but more like getting access to the the advanced control panel for the language you already know.
That's a great analogy, yes. It's about adding finesse.
And for our listeners who might feel grammar is just a list of rules to memorize, thinking about it this way, as tools to communicate better, more effectively, more subtly, that might make it feel less daunting.
Hopefully. These structures aren't just obstacles, they are pathways to more sophisticated expression.
So another point for reflection for our listeners, looking at these C1 grammar points, participle clauses, advanced conditionals, passives, modals, cleft sentences, inversion, narrative tenses, future expressions, which one feels like the biggest jump from your current level?
Yeah, and maybe which one, if you mastered it, do you think would have the most positive impact on your English right now? Where would it make the biggest difference for you?
Food for thought. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. We've talked grammar, now let's talk vocabulary.
Equally crucial, if not more so, for reaching C1. You can have perfect grammar, but without the right words.
You're still limited. Exactly. And one of the sources, that article from the Britannia English School, really hammers this home.
What's their main point?
They basically state that a strong command of advanced vocabulary is a cornerstone of C1. It's fundamental.
And do they explain why it's so important? What are the benefits?
Yes, they do. They break it down quite nicely. It's not just about sounding smarter, although that might be a side effect.
Okay, so what are the tangible advantages?
Improved articulation, being able to express your ideas more precisely and clearly.
Makes sense. The right word makes all the difference.
Deeper comprehension, understanding more complex texts and conversations, because you know the specific vocabulary being used.
Right. Fewer gaps in understanding.
Enhanced writing skills. A richer vocabulary allows for more varied, engaging, and sophisticated writing.
Avoiding repetition, using more descriptive language.
Exactly. Better academic performance, naturally, if you're studying in English.
Sure. Understanding lectures, reading academic papers, writing essays. Vocabulary is key.
And generally, a greater capacity for diverse and nuanced expression, being able to capture subtle shades of meaning.
So the key insight from that article seems to be that advanced vocabulary isn't just a nice to have. It actively unlocks a higher level of communication skill across the board: speaking, listening, reading, writing.
Precisely. It empowers you. So how do we build this cornerstone? The article suggests some strategies.
Okay, practical tips. Always good. What do they recommend?
Reading diversely. This came up in the Reddit threads too, actually.
Reading widely. Makes sense. What kind of diversity are we talking about?
Across different genres. Fiction, nonfiction, news articles, academic papers, maybe even poetry or technical manuals, depending on your interest.
Why is that diversity important?
Because different genres use different language styles, different sentence structures, and crucially, different sets of vocabulary and terminology.
Ah, so reading a novel gives you different words than reading a scientific journal or a business report.
Exactly. It exposes you to a much wider range of language and context. You see how words are actually used in different fields and styles.
That exposure seems vital. It's not just about memorizing lists.
No, definitely not. Although, the next strategy mentioned is using flashcards.
Ah, the classic. Love them or hate them, flashcards persist.
They do. The article emphasizes using them for new words and their definitions, stressing regular practice. Maybe using spaced repetition systems, SRS, like Anki or Quizlet.
Yeah, SRS is very effective for memorization, but the key, as we hinted, is probably not just memorizing the word and a single definition.
What else should you do?
Understand the nuances, look at example sentences like the ones Lucy provides in her videos, maybe note down collocations, words that often go together. Think about synonyms and antonyms. Make the learning active.
Right, not just passively looking at the card. Maybe try to create your own sentence using the new word.
Excellent idea. Active recall and usage.
Okay, so diverse reading, effective use of flashcards. What else?
Engaging in conversations. Makes perfect sense.
Using the new vocabulary in real time.
Exactly. It's one thing to recognize a word when you read it, or even recall it for a flashcard test. It's another thing entirely to pull it out of your brain and use it correctly and naturally in a spontaneous conversation.
That takes practice and maybe a bit of courage. Stepping outside your comfort zone?
It does, but it's arguably the best way to make new vocabulary truly yours, part of your active, usable language.
Good point. And the final strategy from the Britannia article.
Writing regularly.
Ah, yes. Another active skill.
Very much so. Whether it's keeping a journal, writing emails, composing essays, maybe even creative writing, the act of writing forces you to retrieve and use vocabulary.
It reinforces the learning, doesn't it? You have to think about which word fits best, how to structure the sentence around it.
Precisely. It moves words from your passive knowledge, words you understand, to your active knowledge, words you can actually use. So, reading, flashcards, speaking, writing a multi-pronged approach.
Okay, that gives us the how. Now, what about the what? What kind of vocabulary are we talking about at C1?
Well, those English with Lucy videos give us some concrete examples. She has videos dedicated to advanced verbs, adjectives, and phrases.
Right. Let's look at some verbs first. She listed 20, but maybe we can highlight a few.
Sure, she included words like advocate.
Meaning to publicly support or recommend something, like she advocates for stricter environmental policy.
Exactly, or amplify.
To make something stronger, louder, more intense. His speech amplified the concerns of the residents.
Good one. Articulate.
To express ideas clearly and effectively. He found it difficult to articulate his feelings.
Comprehend.
Basically, to understand fully. It took me a while to comprehend the complexity of the issue.
And maybe one more.
Convey. To communicate or make something known. The report conveys a sense of urgency.
So you can see these verbs are often a bit more formal or precise than simpler synonyms like support, increase, say, understand, tell.
Yes, they add a layer of sophistication. And seeing them in example sentences really helps cement the meaning.
Absolutely. Context is everything.
Okay, what about advanced adjectives? Lucy had a list of those too.
She did. Again, let's pick a few. Ambivalent.
Having mixed feelings or contradictory ideas about something. I feel ambivalent about the move. Excited, but also nervous.
A very useful word for expressing complex emotions. How about derogatory?
Showing disrespect or a low opinion. He made some derogatory remarks about her work. Definitely need to be careful with words like that.
Indeed. Understanding the connotation is crucial. Esoteric.
Ah, that's a good one. Meaning understood by only a small group with specialized knowledge. The lecture was full of esoteric jargon.
Right, not for a general audience. Flippant.
Not showing a serious or respectful attitude, often inappropriately so. His flippant response annoyed the teacher.
And maybe grandiose.
Excessively grand or ambitious, sometimes unrealistically so. He has these grandiose plans to build a castle.
Again, notice the specificity. These aren't everyday adjectives, but they allow for very precise description when needed.
They definitely paint a clearer picture than just saying mixed feelings or disrespectful or specialized.
Exactly. That's the power of a larger vocabulary.
Okay, verbs, adjectives. What about phrases? Lucy had a video on those too, right? Related to lifestyle, work, etc.
Yes, advanced phrases and idioms. These are often what make non-native speech sound, well, less native. Mastering them is a big step towards fluency.
They can be tricky because they're not always literal.
Not at all. Let's look at some examples she gave. Have a crack at something.
Meaning to try or attempt something. I've never done it before, but I'll have a crack at it. Quite informal, that one.
It is. How about burn the midnight oil?
To work very late into the night. She's been burning the midnight oil to finish her thesis.
A classic idiom. Strike a balance.
To find a compromise between two things. It's hard to strike a balance between work and family life.
Very common and useful. Stick one's neck out.
To take a risk, often by saying or doing something that might attract criticism. He's stuck his neck out to defend his colleague.
Right. Implies potential danger or negative consequences. Knee-jerk reaction.
An immediate, unthinking response or opinion. Don't just have a knee-jerk reaction. Think about it carefully.
Good advice. Pull some strings.
To use your influence, often secretly, to make something happen. He had to pull some strings to get those tickets.
Have a field day.
To thoroughly enjoy criticizing or making fun of someone or something, often when they've made a mistake. The newspapers had a field day with the politician's blunder.
A bit negative, that one often. And lastly, be privy to.
To be aware of secret or confidential information. Only a few people were privy to the details of the merger. Sounds quite formal.
It does. So these phrases add color, nuance, and naturalness to your English, but you need to understand their meaning, connotation, and appropriate context.
Absolutely. Using an idiom incorrectly can be more confusing than helpful.
Very true. So the overall message for vocabulary at C1 is go wide, read diversely, go deep, understand nuances, And be active. Use the words and phrases in speaking and writing.
And for our listener aiming for that quick but thorough understanding, building this rich vocabulary is essential. It gives you the tools for that precision you need.
Definitely. So perhaps a question for listeners here. Which of these vocabulary building strategies, reading, flashcards, conversation, writing, feels most appealing or sustainable for you?
And are there specific types of vocabulary, verbs, adjectives, work-related phrases, social idioms that you feel you need to focus on most urgently for your personal goals?
Identifying priorities can make the task seem less overwhelming.
Absolutely. Okay, we've covered the what of C1 and looked at grammar and vocabulary specifics. Now let's get really practical.
How to consolidate all this, how to actually improve day to day.
Exactly. And those Reddit threads we looked at offer some brilliant insights from people actually doing it. Real-world advice.
Yes, that peer-to-peer experience is invaluable. What kind of things were people discussing?
Well, the user who started one thread, Viazir Ido, expressed a feeling that's probably quite common. They felt they were advanced, but still sometimes missed common structures or expressions.
Kind of like hitting a plateau, maybe, or realizing there are still gaps.
Exactly. And they specifically wanted to brush up on grammar for technical writing. That feeling of almost there, but not quite for specific needs.
That resonates. C1 isn't the end of the journey. There's always more refinement possible, especially towards C2 or for specialized contexts.
So what advice did people offer in those threads? There were some recurring themes.
Let's hear them.
Number one, overwhelmingly, was increase exposure to native speaker content.
We heard that for vocabulary building, too. What kind of content?
Pretty much anything authentic. News articles, podcasts, like this one, hopefully. Books written for native speakers, TV shows, movies.
Just immersing yourself in the language as it's naturally used. As Ren15, another Reddit user mentioned, really emphasized reading content for native speakers.
Yes. Moving away from graded readers or materials simplified for learners. Taking the training wheels off, so to speak.
It's challenging, but that's where you encounter the full range of vocabulary, complex structures, cultural references, everything.
Definitely. Linked to watching content, another tip was to ditch the subtitles.
Ah, the subtitle debate. Always a lively one.
Indeed. The suggestion was maybe start with English subtitles if you currently use native language ones, but the goal is to eventually watch without any.
Why is that considered important?
It forces your brain to rely solely on listening comprehension. You have to work harder to understand, which strengthens those skills. You start picking up things from context, intonation.
It trains your ear much more effectively than reading along, though it can be frustrating at first.
Oh, absolutely. Patience is required. What else? Looking up unknown words.
That came up in the Britannia article, too. Standard advice, but crucial.
Right. Don't just skip over words you don't know. Look them up. And then, crucially, do something with them. Make flashcards, write them down, try to use them.
Closing the loop. Not just passive recognition, but active learning.
Exactly. And another big one, actively use the language.
Speak, write, discuss. Get it out there.
Yes. Several comments stress this. Join discussion groups, find language exchange partners, write comments online, start a blog. Anything that involves producing English.
Because passive knowledge doesn't automatically translate to active skill, you have to practice the output.
Ido, the original poster, actually had a great idea for this, keeping a personal diary in English.
Oh, that's a fantastic low-pressure way to practice writing regularly.
Isn't it? You can write about your day, your thoughts, your feelings, experiment with new words and structures without worrying about being judged.
A safe space for practice. Brilliant.
Another interesting concept mentioned was focusing on content in your zone of proximal development.
Vygotsky's idea, right? The sweet spot for learning.
Exactly. Material that's slightly above your current level, challenging enough to make you stretch and learn, but not so difficult that it's completely overwhelming or demotivating.
Finding that balance is key for sustained progress. If it's too easy, you get bored. If it's too hard, you get frustrated and give up.
So consciously seeking out materials that push you just the right amount.
That requires a bit of self-awareness about your current level and where the gaps are.
True. Related to improving, especially writing, was the tip to reread your own work.
Self-correction?
Yes, but specifically looking for grammar mistakes, awkward phrasing, ways to improve sentence structure, actively editing your own output.
That's a powerful learning tool. It helps you identify your own common errors and become more conscious of them.
Definitely. For speaking skills, particularly pronunciation, the advice was to talk with native speakers if possible.
Get that real-time feedback and exposure to natural rhythm and intonation.
Yes, though one commenter wisely added a caveat. Be aware of the huge variety of English accents.
Good point. British, American, Australian, Irish, Scottish, various regional accents within those.
Exactly. So maybe don't stress about sounding perfectly like one specific accent, but focus on clarity and understanding intonation patterns, which Azrin 15 mentioned as important for C2 level comfort.
Yeah, comprehensibility is usually more important than mimicking a specific accent, unless you have a very particular reason to. Understanding intonation for meaning, though, that's universally useful.
Right. And one final practical tip from the threads. Consider taking C1 practice exams.
Like the Cambridge C1 Advanced, CAE, or similar.
Exactly. Even if you don't plan to take the official test, the practice materials can be really useful.
How so?
They show you the types of tasks involved, test all 4 skills, reading, writing, listening, speaking, plus grammar and vocabulary, and help you identify your specific strengths and weaknesses against the C1 standard.
It's like a diagnostic tool, helping you focus your study efforts more effectively.
Precisely. And it gets you familiar with the expected level and question formats.
That makes sense. So lots of practical wisdom from fellow learners there.
Absolutely. And Azrin 15's point really stood out that the biggest hurdle from B2 to C1 is often vocabulary depth and breadth.
Reinforcing the importance of all that reading and active vocabulary work we discussed earlier.
Yes. And their comment about the C1-C2 distinction blurring when you engage with native content is interesting too.
Suggests that once you're comfortably operating with authentic materials, the formal level definitions become less rigid, perhaps. It's more of a continuum.
Maybe so. It's about continuous improvement rather than just hitting a specific level and stopping.
A lifelong journey for many.
So for our listeners seeking structure and actionable steps, these tips from the Reddit community are gold. Consistent engagement reading, listening, speaking, writing, combined with focused effort on vocabulary and identifying fixing errors seems to be the consensus.
It's not magic, it's a persistent, targeted effort.
Exactly. So reflecting on this, listeners, which of these practical tips are you already doing? Reading native content, using flashcards, speaking regularly, writing.
And more importantly, which new tip could you realistically incorporate into your routine starting this week? Maybe keeping that English diary. Or trying a TV show without subtitles.
Small, consistent actions add up, don't they?
They really do.
Okay, we're nearing the end of our deep dive, but we can't finish without talking about specific resources. People always want to know what tools they can use.
Understandably. Having good materials can make a big difference. That Mezzofanti Guild article listed quite a few, didn't it?
It did. A nice curated list covering different skills and platforms. Useful for people wondering where to start.
What were some of the highlights from that list?
For reading practice, particularly current events, they recommended News in Levels.
Yes. They provide news articles at different difficulty levels.
Exactly. Level 3 is suggested for upper intermediate advanced learners. It's authentic news, but maybe with some definitions provided for tougher words.
A good stepping stone towards reading unadapted news sources.
Definitely. For listening, they mentioned the English Learning for Curious Minds podcast.
Podcasts are brilliant for exposure to natural speech on interesting topics. You can listen while commuting, doing chores.
Very flexible. And this one apparently covers a wide range of subjects, which helps with vocabulary too.
Good combination. What about focused skill practice?
For reading comprehension specifically, they listed a book, Practice Makes Perfect Advanced English Reading and Comprehension.
Sounds like a workbook approach. Texts followed by exercises.
Presumably. That kind of targeted practice can be really effective for honing specific reading skills like identifying main ideas, understanding inference, analyzing text structure.
Useful if reading complex texts is a particular challenge or goal.
For writing improvement, especially clarity and conciseness, they recommended the Hemingway app.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. It highlights long sentences, passive voice, adverbs.
Supposedly, yes. It encourages a more direct, punchy writing style. Could be useful for refining essays or professional emails.
A digital editor helping you trim the fat from your writing.
Interesting. Then there's a tool for vocabulary building while reading online. The ReadLane Chrome extension.
How does that work?
You install it in your browser, and when you're reading an article online in English, you can click on any word you don't know.
And it gives you a definition instantly.
Exactly. Right there on the page. It can also create flashcards from the words you look up.
Oh, that sounds incredibly convenient. Reduces the friction of having to stop and open a dictionary constantly.
My thought exactly. Makes reading native content less intimidating and turns it into a vocabulary learning opportunity seamlessly.
Very clever. What about more structured learning, like courses?
The article mentioned Coursera's advanced grammar and punctuation specialization.
Ah, so for learners who want a deep dive into the rules and mechanics at a high level from a university platform.
Yes. Could be good for someone wanting a really thorough, systematic understanding, maybe for academic or professional writing needs.
Provides that theoretical underpinning.
For more general video-based learning, the English YouTube channel was listed.
Emma's channel. Yes, she's very popular. Clear explanations, practical tips on pronunciation, grammar, conversation.
Seems like a good supplementary resource, offering bite-sized lessons on various topics.
YouTube is a treasure trove for language learning if you find the right channels.
Absolutely. And finally, for personalized help, the article mentioned italki.
The platform connecting learners with tutors.
Yes, you can find professional teachers or community tutors for one-on-one lessons, conversation practice, feedback on your writing, anything really.
That personalized attention can be invaluable, especially for speaking practice and getting specific questions answered. You can tailor the lessons exactly to your needs.
Totally customizable. So that Mezzofanti Guild list covers reading, listening, writing, grammar, vocabulary, general learning, and tutoring. Pretty comprehensive.
A good starting point for exploring options. Were there other resources mentioned in our sources?
Well, Lucy, in her videos, naturally mentions her own C1 program.
Right, she offers a structured course covering the key C1 skills.
Yes, she describes it as comprehensive, tackling vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, writing, listening, the works. Could be an option for someone wanting an all-in-one guided path.
A complete package, potentially.
And we should also mention the actual C1 exams themselves as a resource, in a way.
Like the Cambridge C1 Advanced, CAE.
Exactly. Preparing for and taking such an exam provides a clear goal and structure. Plus, the qualification itself is widely recognized.
Yes, universities and employers often require it as proof of advanced English ability. So the exam framework itself dictates what skills and knowledge are expected at C1.
So using practice materials for exams like CAE can guide your learning towards internationally recognized standards.
Good point. So it seems there's no shortage of resources out there catering to different learning styles, budgets, and goals.
Definitely not. From free online tools and podcasts to structured courses and personalized tutoring, the options are vast.
Which is great, but can also be a bit overwhelming, perhaps.
It can, which is why curated lists like the one in the Mezzofanti article are helpful starting points.
So for our listeners needing those effective tools, maybe the next step is to look at this list, or just think about the types of resources mentioned.
And pick one or two that genuinely appeal to you and fit your learning style and current needs. You don't need to use everything.
Absolutely. Find what works for you. Which leads us to a final question for listeners to ponder. Looking at these resources, podcasts, apps, websites, courses, tutors, books, which one or two feel like the best fit for you right now?
Yeah, which one could you realistically explore or start using this week to take a concrete step forward on your C1 journey? Don't try to do everything at once.
Choose one thing and give it a try.
Wise advice. Okay, I think that brings us towards the end of this deep dive. Let's try and synthesize the key takeaways.
Sounds good. It's been a detailed exploration.
It really has. So first, we define C1. It's not just about knowing more stuff. It's about that real freedom and flexibility of expression.
Being able to function effectively and spontaneously in a wide range of demanding situations, social, academic, professional, understanding complex ideas and expressing nuanced thoughts.
Then we dug into C1 grammar. The focus isn't on totally new rules, but on mastering more sophisticated structures.
Like participle clauses, advanced conditionals, complex passives, nuanced modals, cleft sentences, inversion tools for adding precision, emphasis, conciseness, and style. Finesse, as we called it.
Next, vocabulary. A cornerstone of C1. We need a wide and deep vocabulary.
And we build that through diverse reading, active learning strategies like flashcards, engaging in conversation, and regular writing practice. Mastering advanced verbs, adjectives, and idiomatic phrases is key.
Then we looked at practical ways to improve, drawing heavily on those Reddit threads.
Key themes there were massive exposure to authentic native content, ditching subtitles, actively looking up and learning new words, consistent speaking and writing practice.
Focusing on challenging but achievable material, self-correction, getting pronunciation feedback, and maybe using practice exams. Consistent, active engagement.
And finally, we highlighted a range of resources, websites, podcasts, apps, books, courses, tutoring platforms to support learners on this path.
So, the big picture message seems to be, reaching C1 is definitely achievable. It takes consistent effort, smart strategies, and using the right resources, but it's within reach.
It's a marathon, perhaps. Not a sprint, but a very rewarding one.
Absolutely. And so as we wrap up, we want to leave our listeners with one final thought to mull over.
A provocative question to take away.
Exactly. We've talked about grammar, vocabulary, skills like writing and speaking, comprehension. Considering your own English journey right now, which specific aspect of C1 proficiency?
Maybe mastering a particular grammar point or building vocabulary in a certain field, or gaining confidence in debates or understanding fast speech better.
Which specific aspect are you most motivated to focus on next? What's the priority that excites you or feels most necessary for your goals right now?
Identifying that personal focus can provide direction and renewed energy for the journey ahead.
A great point.
And today, we're putting on our explorer hats, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
We're diving deep into a really great resource. It's the first episode of Real Life English, Speak English, Like a Native Speaker.
Oh, the one by Speak English with Tiffany on YouTube.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And our mission basically is to really dig in, get beneath the surface,
Right.
and uncover, the nuances, how native speakers actually use certain words, certain expressions in just everyday situations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Teacher Tiffany, she just has such a great way of breaking things down.
She really does.
In this video, she introduces some pretty common English words and phrases.
Mm-hmm.
Puts them in these relatable, like, real-world scenarios.
Yeah, the context is key.
Totally. And she even throws in a quick quiz at the end just to, check your understanding. It's super engaging, actually.
And that's kind of where our deep dive fits in, right? We want to take you, our listeners, beyond just the basic definitions.
Yeah, more than just the dictionary.
Exactly. We're going to explore those subtle shades of meaning, the real-world applications.
Uh-huh.
And hopefully, spark a few of those aha moments.
Love those moments.
Yeah. The kind that really elevate your understanding and your confidence when you actually speak English.
Think of it like getting the inside scoop.
Pretty much. The inside scoop on sounding more authentic.
Okay, so let's unpack the first word. Tiffany introduces it as dependable.
Right.
And she pairs it with this image. Two young women, one is kind of leaning on the other.
Mm-hmm. It's a strong visual.
It really is. Gives you a sense of the word straight away.
And what's interesting, I think, about starting with dependable is how it taps into something really fundamental, like trust.
Yeah, good point.
Tiffany's definition is trustworthy, reliable, and capable of being trusted or depended on.
Okay.
And that image, that physical reliance, it really sort of anchors the meaning, doesn't it?
It does. Makes you think, how often do we actually rely on other people?
All the time. Big ways, small ways.
Right. And she actually prompts you, the viewer, to think about dependable people in your life.
Which is smart. It's not just memorizing.
No, it's making that personal connection. Like, who are those people you can always count on no matter what?
Exactly. That personal relevance, it's just so key to really learning a word, not just knowing it. And if you think about why this matters for English learners,
Right.
Understanding dependable, well, it lets you express a really crucial part of relationships, of character.
Right. Instead of just saying someone's good.
Exactly. You can be specific.
Yeah.
It's this kind of goodness, being reliable, being someone people can count on. And that idea, dependability, it's highly valued in a lot of English-speaking cultures.
Definitely. Then Tiffany gives us the example sentence. Her boss said that she was a very dependable assistant.
Yeah.
And what's great is she stresses, this isn't just for work.
No, not at all.
You can absolutely use dependable for a friend who always keeps their word, or, a family member who's always there.
Exactly. It shows the word's breadth. The example might be professional, but that underlying quality, reliability, it's universal. Which, it brings up an interesting point, maybe. Are there subtle differences, between dependable, reliable, trustworthy?
That's a good question. Maybe. Maybe dependable feels more about personal support, like being there when needed.
Yeah, possibly. Whereas reliable might be more about consistent performance, maybe. Like a reliable car.
Could be. And Tiffany even touches on pronunciation, encourages you to say it out loud.
Which is important. Such a small thing, but vital.
Definitely. Makes it feel like your word.
It really is. Understanding it intellectually is one thing.
Right.
But saying it correctly, that builds confidence for actually using it.
Okay, so that's dependable. Let's move to the second word. Exuberant.
Exuberant. This one's paired with a picture, a young woman with this amazing smile, just beaming.
Yeah, you can almost feel the joy.
Totally. And right off the bat, Tiffany uses exuberant to describe herself, her own enthusiastic personality.
Which is a great move. It immediately connects the word to a feeling, an energy.
Yeah, you see her enthusiasm, and it helps you just get what exuberant means.
So what's the definition she gives?
She defines it as joyously, unrestrained, and enthusiastic.
Ooh, unrestrained. That's key.
Exactly. That word unrestrained is crucial. It suggests a level of joy that isn't held back, it just bubbles over.
Like the smile in the picture. Genuine, wide.
Perfectly captures it, that feeling of uninhibited happiness. It's not just being happy, it's showing it. Outwardly, energetically.
And again, she does that thing where she asks you to think about exuberant people you know.
Mm-hmm.
Those people who are just full of life, full of energy, who bring that joy into a room.
And making that personal connection, again, it helps solidify the meaning. It really sticks.
It does. When you link a word to someone you actually know.
It's like a mental shortcut. You recall their energy and boom, exuberant.
Right. And the example sentence she uses is, he has such an exuberant personality.
Yeah, very direct. Shows a common way to use it. Describes someone's whole vibe, basically.
You can almost picture that person, can't you? Lively, enthusiastic.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've got dependable, someone solid, reliable, and exuberant, someone just bursting with unrestrained joy.
Yeah.
Now, the third word Tiffany brings up is reserved.
Yeah, reserved.
And this one is linked to a young woman, top left in the image, who looks maybe more thoughtful, quieter.
Yeah, and what's quite insightful here is how Tiffany contrasts it with her own personality, which she describes as outgoing.
Right, setting up a direct comparison.
Exactly. She defines reserved as restrained in words and actions, which immediately positions it as, well, almost the opposite of exuberant.
That makes sense. It's a good teaching technique, that contrast.
It really is. She explains how a reserved person might act quieter in groups, maybe.
More listening, observing.
Yeah, perhaps less likely to jump into the conversation right away. And the woman in the picture, she does have that look, maybe a bit introspective.
It visually reinforces that idea of being well reserved.
But the example sentence Tiffany gives is really nuanced. It's clever.
What is it?
It's, my friend is more reserved than I am, but she loves being around people.
Okay. That's a really crucial point.
Totally crucial, because being reserved isn't the same as being shy necessarily or antisocial.
Right. You can enjoy social stuff, but just be quieter about it.
Precisely. A reserved person might genuinely like being social, but they express themselves maybe more subtly, more subdued, or they might process things internally first.
Or prefer smaller groups, maybe.
Could be. That's such an important distinction to make, because sometimes people might mistake reserved for, unfriendly or uninterested.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
But this example shows that's not always the case at all.
And Tiffany adds another little tip, too, doesn't she? About animals.
Oh, yeah. That reserved can also describe animals, like a shy cat or dog that might hide when visitors come.
That actually helps. It broadens the understanding, doesn't it?
It does. Thinking about a shy pet, it illustrates that core meaning again. Restraint, a tendency to hold back from outward expression, makes it relatable in a different way.
Okay, so quick recap. Dependable for reliability, exuberant for that overflowing enthusiasm, and reserved for that quieter, more restrained way of being.
Got it.
Now, Tiffany kind of shifts gears. She introduces a slang term.
Yes. Ride or die.
Yeah, ride or die. Connected to an image of two other women.
And this is where we get into more informal language, right? Culturally specific stuff. Ride or die is a fantastic example of how language evolves, creates these really expressive, informal terms.
So what's the definition she gives for that one?
She defines it as extremely loyal, like someone willing to do absolutely anything for a person they love or deeply appreciate.
Wow. Okay. That's intense.
It is. The key is that unwavering commitment. That loyalty, no matter the challenges, through thick and thin, basically.
And the way she says it in the video, my ride or die, you really feel the depth of it, that connection, that trust.
Totally. And like you said, it's intense. It's definitely not something you'd probably hear in a formal business meeting.
Huh. No, probably not. It carries a real emotional weight.
And that's such a critical point, right? Understanding the register of language.
Knowing when to use formal versus informal.
Exactly. It's essential for communicating effectively. And ride or die is firmly informal for close friends, family, usually.
Using it formally would just sound weird, out of place.
Yeah, possibly unprofessional even, depending on the context.
So the example sentence she uses is, my best friend will always be my ride or die.
Mm-hmm. Really highlights that super close, almost unbreakable bond the term implies.
And then, just like with the others, she encourages you to think about your own ride or die relationships.
Yeah. Those people in your life who you just know would always have your back.
That personal reflection piece again is so valuable.
It really is. It takes the term beyond just a definition. It asks you to consider its meaning in your own life, your own social world.
Who are those people for you?
Exactly. Thinking about that helps internalize not just the meaning, but the emotional weight of the phrase, too.
Okay. All right. So we've covered dependable, exuberant, reserved, and this informal one, ride or die.
Yep. 4 down.
The fifth and final word Tiffany introduces in this part, linked to a woman looking very confident,
Yeah.
is self-assured.
Right. Self-assured. And the image is pretty powerful there, too. The woman's posture, her expression, it really does convey that sense of inner confidence.
Like she's ready to conquer the world.
Pretty much. Tiffany defines self-assured as confident in one's own ability or character.
So having a strong belief in yourself, your capabilities.
Exactly that. Knowing your strengths and trusting them.
The example sentence given is, the new employees could tell that their boss was a very self-assured and confident leader.
Which perfectly illustrates how being self-assured can project that image of competence, inspire trust.
Suggests someone who knows what they're doing, believes in their decisions.
Yeah. But, and this is a really crucial nuance Tiffany points out.
Oh, what's that?
Self-assured can be tricky. It can walk a fine line between being a compliment and potentially being an insult. It really depends heavily on the context and, crucially, the tone of voice.
Ah, right. So saying someone is too self-assured.
Exactly. That could imply arrogance, maybe a lack of humility.
Whereas describing a leader as self-assured, like in the example,
usually conveys positive things. Competence, decisiveness.
Wow, that is such an important takeaway. It's not just the dictionary meaning, is it?
Not at all. It's understanding those subtle connotations, how they shift based on how you use the word, the situation.
You really have to be aware of that potential for, well, misinterpretation.
You absolutely do. It brings up a key question for learners, doesn't it? How do you show self-confidence without tipping over into sounding arrogant?
Yeah, that's tricky.
Understanding the right contexts, using a balanced tone, that's key. And maybe pairing self-assured with other positives, like in the example, self-assured and confident. Maybe that helps soften any potential negative edge.
Could be. Okay, so that's the 5 initial words and expressions. Now, in her video, Tiffany then includes a quick quiz.
Right, the quiz section, to help solidify the understanding.
Which is great, actively testing what you've just learned.
And it's designed to be pretty engaging, you know? Fill in the blanks, that little 5-second timer.
That's a bit of pressure.
In a fun way, encourages you to recall the meanings quickly. It's actually a really effective way to move stuff from short-term to longer-term memory.
Okay, let's just quickly run through those quiz questions and answers just to reinforce it here for our deep dive.
Good idea.
First one was, the interview revealed that he was a very and mature young man.
And the answer there is self-assured.
Right. And in that context, it definitely feels positive, confident, secure, mature.
Exactly. Aligns well with maturity.
Okay, second question. Since her mom was always there for her, the woman said she was her row.
That one's ride or die.
Yeah, really emphasizing that deep loyalty, that unwavering support.
Reinforces the informal but really meaningful nature of that term, the strength of that bond.
Question 3. My friend is quiet and terrible.
That fits perfectly with reserved.
Yeah, connecting back to that idea of someone not very talkative or outgoing.
Links right back to our earlier chat about the meaning, that association with a quieter personality.
Okay, number 4. His passion revealed that he was a very dancer.
Exuberant, that's the one.
Perfect fit. Captures that idea of passion overflowing, expressed with energy, enthusiasm.
Yeah, you can really see the connection between intense passion and that exuberant expression. You can almost picture the dancer.
Totally. And the last one, number 5. I need someone to take care of the children while I'm at work.
And the most logical, necessary quality there is dependable.
Right. Underscores that need for someone trustworthy, reliable, especially with kids.
Brings us right back to that first word, doesn't it? Its core meaning someone you can count on to do what they need to do.
So yeah, the quiz really works. It reinforces the definitions and how you'd actually use these words.
Definitely serves its purpose.
Now, after the quiz, Tiffany takes it another step. She provides these really helpful sentence patterns.
Oh, the patterns. Yeah, those are super valuable.
They really are. Such a great tool for English learners who want to actually start using these words and phrases.
It gives you a template, basically, a structure to work with.
Yeah.
It's just a fantastic teaching approach. Providing those frameworks, it empowers learners, go beyond just understanding.
To actually producing language.
Yeah. Exactly. Constructing their own sentences.
Yeah.
Grammatically correct, contextually right. It's that crucial move from passive recognition to active production.
So let's look at the pattern for dependable.
Yeah.
The name is the most dependable person I know because reason.
Mm-hmm.
And the example she gives is, Mark is the most dependable person I know because he is always there when I need him.
It's so simple, but really effective. Frames it personally, gives a clear reason, makes it immediately usable.
Totally. It prompts the learner to think about their own relationships and apply the word meaningfully.
Okay, what about exuberant?
For exuberant, the pattern is, the exuberant person description enjoys action connected to exuberance.
Okay.
And the example, the exuberant woman with the long hair enjoys making other people laugh.
Ah, nice. It links the trait, the description, with a specific joyful action.
Clearly connects that energetic personality with something that reflects it, like spreading joy through laughter. It makes it very visual.
You can really picture that person. What about reserved? The pattern for reserved is person was very reserved, so person didn't action connected to being reserved.
Right, showing the consequence. All right.
Exactly. And the example, her brother was very reserved, so he didn't speak to anyone at the event.
Mm-hmm. Effectively highlights that link between the personality and maybe less verbal participation socially.
Illustrates how that internal restraint might influence outward behavior in, say, a party setting. Helps you understand the implications.
Makes sense. Okay, ride or die.
The pattern is, person has been my ride or die since time period.
Oh, adding the time element.
Yeah. Example, she has been my ride or die since we were in the 4th grade.
Wow, that really emphasizes the duration, the depth of that loyalty. It's not just a recent thing.
Exactly. It powerfully underscores that enduring bond. It brings that sense of shared history, long-term friendship to life. You can imagine the experiences that built that connection.
Definitely. And finally, self-assured.
For self-assured, the pattern is, a self-assured person, usually action connected to being self-assured.
Okay, focusing on typical behavior.
Right. Example, a self-assured person usually speaks well in front of a crowd of people.
So, connecting the internal feeling, self-assurance, with an outward, confident action.
Precisely. It's a great way to see how someone with that quality might typically act in different situations, providing these patterns. It's just such a valuable bridge.
Between understanding and actually using the language.
Absolutely. Moves learners beyond just knowing definitions to actually building their own sentences. Critical step for fluency, for confidence.
Okay, so after these incredibly useful patterns, Tiffany then shares a personal story.
The story time segment, yeah.
And this gives even deeper insight into how these terms work in the real world, especially ride or die, and also reserved.
Right. It revolves around an experience she had back in college with her best friend, her ride or die.
Yeah, she sets the scene. They're at some college event about to have lunch. And then this guy, a former romantic interest of Tiffany's, also happens to be there.
Oh, awkward.
Right. Immediately creates this potentially uncomfortable vibe.
You can almost feel that tension just from the setup. Tiffany's there with her close friend, and this person from her past just sits down right in front of them, unexpectedly.
Even if it wasn't like a bad breakup, there's still that awkwardness.
Right.
Running into an old flame.
Totally. And Tiffany makes a specific point of saying her best friend, while being her ultimate ride or die, is also naturally very reserved.
Right. Someone who usually doesn't jump into conversations or like assert herself much socially. More of an observer.
And this contrast is so important for what happens next.
Yeah.
You have this super loyal friend, someone Tiffany trusts completely, but who also has this quiet, reserved nature. So the expectation might be
that she wouldn't really intervene.
Yeah.
Just kind of watch the awkwardness unfold.
Exactly. That might be the assumption.
But then,
yeah,
as the the small talk between Tiffany and this guy starts to dry up.
The cringy silence.
Yeah. And the atmosphere gets more and more uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Her reserved friend does something totally unexpected.
This is the key moment.
She speaks up, and she directly asks the guy, "Why are you still sitting here?"
Wow, direct.
Super direct. And then she follows it up with, "If you're done, it's okay to walk away now."
Oh my goodness, from the reserved friend.
Exactly. That's what makes this story so powerful, that unexpected assertiveness coming from someone described as reserved.
It's a fantastic illustration, isn't it? That being reserved doesn't mean being passive.
Not at all. Or unwilling to act when it really counts.
Especially when it's about supporting your ride or die friend in a tough spot.
Tiffany says she was pretty taken aback by her friend's directness.
I bet.
But it was incredibly effective. It just diffused the awkwardness, allowed Tiffany to get out of there gracefully.
And like Tiffany says, in that moment, her reserved friend truly, truly had her back.
Yeah.
So that anecdote, it just gives such a richer, more nuanced understanding of both ride or die loyalty and the fact that reserved people, they have their own ways of showing support, even assertiveness, when it's needed.
It really challenges those simple assumptions about personality types, doesn't it? How they behave.
It absolutely does. And it makes you think about your own friends, right?
Totally. Those quiet ones who might surprise you.
Yeah. The ones who stay in the background, maybe, but deep down, you know they'd be the first to step up if you really needed them.
It's a great reminder that, people can surprise you. Loyalty shows up in unexpected ways.
And it connects these vocabulary words: dependable, exuberant, reserved, ride or die, self-assured. It connects them to real human stuff. Interactions, emotions, complex social situations.
Makes them much more meaningful.
And ultimately, much more memorable for you, our listeners, as you keep going on your English journey.
Okay, so to kind of bring our deep dive on Tiffany's video to a close. We've really dug into the meanings, the subtle nuances, the real-life uses of these 5 key English words and expressions.
Dependable, exuberant, reserved, ride or die, and self-assured.
Yep. We looked at Tiffany's really clear definitions, the helpful examples, that fun quiz.
Those great sentence patterns.
Yeah, the patterns.
Yeah.
And that really insightful personal story about her friend.
And the big takeaway here, I think the overarching message, it's just how vital it is to understand how native speakers actually use these words in context.
Right. It's so much more than just memorizing a definition from a dictionary.
Oh, yeah. It's about grasping the subtle feelings, the connotations, the right register, formal, informal, and knowing when and how to use them yourself effectively.
Exactly. And by getting a deeper feel for these kinds of natural expressions, you can really boost your English fluency.
Make your own spoken English sound much more authentic, more natural.
It's often those little things, those nuances that make a huge difference in how well you connect with other English speakers.
Which leads us to maybe a final thought for everyone listening.
Okay.
How many other words and phrases are out there, seemingly straightforward English words, but that actually carry these rich layers of meaning, these practical, real-world uses? That's a really interesting question. By paying closer attention, maybe, to these everyday expressions you hear in conversations, in movies, TV shows, whatever you consume, you can potentially unlock a much deeper, more nuanced understanding of the language itself and the culture behind it, too.
That is a fantastic point to really chew on. So, yeah, we definitely encourage you. Actively listen. Notice how native speakers use these kinds of phrases day to day. You might be surprised what you uncover. And, well, that brings us pretty much to the end of this deep dive.
It does indeed.
Thank you all so much for joining us today, for spending this time with us.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.